My name is Aisha Morgan. At least, that's the name printed on my passport and the credit cards my family liked to joke about, the ones they assumed were always maxed out. In their version of reality, I was the embarrassment. The awkward middle child with potential but no direction. The girl who chose a hobby over a real career. The irony is, if I had stood up at that dinner table and said the truth out loud, every single person there would have laughed. So I stayed quiet. Because silence was safer. The dinner was held at my parents' house, the same house where I grew up being compared to my siblings like a failed experiment. The place smelled of roasted chicken, expensive wine, and judgment. Crystal glasses clinked, laughter bounced off the walls, and every smile felt rehearsed. This dinner wasn't for me. It was for my older brother, Daniel. Daniel, the golden child. Harvard graduate. Investment banker. Recently engaged. And tonight, we were all here to celebrate her. His fiancée, Lauren. She was perfect in that effortless way, polished smile, designer dress, soft laugh timed perfectly after every sentence. She sat beside Daniel like she belonged there. Like she had always belonged there. I sat across from them, wearing a simple black dress I'd bought years ago, quietly sipping water, while everyone else drank wine that probably cost more than my first laptop. So, Aisha, my aunt said suddenly, eyes lighting up with fake curiosity. What are you doing these days? The table went quiet. I felt it, that familiar tightening in my chest. My mother smiled too quickly. My father adjusted his grip on his wine glass. Daniel smirked. Oh, my father jumped in before I could answer, waving his hand dismissively. She's still working on that little computer thing of hers. Lauren tilted her head. Computer thing? Daniel chuckled. Yeah, some online project. She's always been into that. They laughed. I forced a small smile. It's more of a passion project, my mother added, as if apologizing to the table for my existence. She's still trying to figure herself out. Trying to figure myself out. At 28. With a calm expression, I folded my napkin, keeping my voice steady. I work in tech. Oh honey, my aunt laughed softly. Everyone works in tech these days. More laughter. Lauren leaned forward, curiosity mixed with pity. So, like coding? Freelancing? Daniel raised his glass. Let's not get too technical. It's just a hobby. A hobby. That word echoed in my head. They didn't know that the hobby Daniel mocked paid for the engagement ring on his finger. They didn't know that the little computer project my father dismissed had investors, contracts, and offices in 3 countries. They didn't know because I had never told them. Not because I couldn't, but because I wanted to see how far they'd go. The conversation moved on, but the damage was done. I faded into the background while stories of Daniel's success filled the room. Promotions. Bonuses. Future plans. Lauren listened with admiration, occasionally glancing at me like I was a cautionary tale. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules. I excused myself after dessert, stepping outside into the cold night air. The house was loud behind me, full of praise and pride, none of it meant for me. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Board meeting confirmed. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. All executives attending. I smiled. The irony was almost poetic. Inside that house, I was the failure. Outside it, I was the person companies begged to meet. I slipped my phone back into my pocket as the door opened behind me. Lauren stepped out, wrapping her coat tighter around herself. Hey, she said gently. I hope I didn't make things awkward in there. You didn't, I replied. She hesitated. Daniel says you're still finding your way. I met her eyes. Yes, I said calmly. Something like that. She smiled, relieved, and went back inside. I stayed outside a moment longer, breathing in the quiet. They thought they knew my story. They were wrong. And soon, very soon, they would find out just how expensive it was to underestimate me. The next morning, I walked into the glass building everyone in my city recognized, but few truly understood. Silver Tech Solutions. To the outside world, it was a tech giant, innovative, mysterious, untouchable. To investors, it was a gold mine. To competitors, a nightmare. To me, it was home. The receptionist stood up the moment she saw me. "Good morning, Ms. Morgan." Executives straightened their posture as I passed. Some nodded with respect, others with quiet nervousness. The boardroom doors opened without me asking. Inside, 12 people waited. The same people who controlled millions of dollars. The same people my family had unknowingly benefited from for years. I took my seat at the head of the table. "Let's begin," I said calmly. As presentations rolled and projections climbed higher, one name appeared repeatedly on the screen. Daniel Morgan. My brother. One of Silvertech's biggest clients. He had no idea. That evening, my phone buzzed nonstop. Family group chat. "Mom, dinner tonight?" "Everyone's still in town." "Dad, Daniel has big news." I smiled. Perfect timing. The restaurant Daniel chose was expensive, the kind where menus didn't list prices. He wanted to impress Lauren. He wanted to remind everyone who mattered. I arrived last. Lauren looked surprised to see me. Daniel barely looked up. "You still doing your computer stuff?" he asked casually. I smiled. "Something like that." The waiter arrived with champagne. Daniel stood up, tapping his glass. "I've accepted a major partnership deal today," he announced proudly. "With one of the biggest tech companies in the country." Applause. Lauren squeezed his hand. My parents beamed. "And the CEO?" my father asked. "Must be some genius." Daniel laughed. "Never met her. These people hide behind screens." I lifted my glass. "Funny," I said softly. "I know her." Silence. Daniel frowned. "You know who?" I met his eyes. "The CEO." Laughter erupted. "Oh, Aisha," my aunt said. "Please don't embarrass yourself." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I simply raised my glass higher. "To partnerships," I said. "May they always be based on respect." Daniel's phone buzzed. His smile vanished. He stared at the screen. Then at me. Then back at the screen. "Why," he whispered, "is Silvertech requesting an emergency meeting?" I took a sip of champagne. "Because," I said calmly, "they finally decided to meet you." The table froze. Lauren's eyes widened. My mother's hand trembled. Daniel stood slowly. "What did you do?" I stood too. Nothing dramatic. Just honest. I stopped being quiet. I placed my card on the table. Aisha Morgan, founder and CEO, Silvertech Solutions. No one spoke. No one laughed. And for the first time in my life, they saw me. To be continued. My mother's tears didn't move me the way she expected. Not anymore. I wasn't wasting my life, I said quietly. I was building one. Lauren pushed her chair back slightly, looking between Daniel and me. "You let them talk about her like that?" she asked. My hand. "Aisha, please. Don't leave like this." I gently pulled away. "You taught me to stand on my own. This is just the result." Outside, the night felt lighter. For the first time, I wasn't carrying their expectations on my back. The next morning, the boardroom was full. Daniel arrived late. He didn't look like the golden child anymore. He looked like a man facing the truth. I stood at the head of the table. "Let's begin," I said. And this time, no one underestimated me. I thought it was over. I was wrong. 2 days after the board meeting, my phone rang while I was reviewing contracts in my office. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Aisha," my father's voice came through, strained and unfamiliar. "Your mother collapsed." The pen slipped from my fingers. "What?" "She's conscious," he rushed to say. "But the doctor said it was stress. She keeps asking for you." For a moment, the CEO and me disappeared. I was just a daughter again. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and regret. My mother lay pale against white sheets, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "I'm sorry," she whispered before I could speak. "I failed you." I sat beside her bed, the anger inside me finally cracking. Why was it so hard to believe in me? Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd end up alone. Afraid I didn't understand your world." I squeezed her hand. "Not understanding doesn't give anyone the right to belittle." She nodded. Outside the room, Daniel waited. Not confident. Not smug. Just small. "They postponed the partnership review," he said quietly. "They said you requested it." I did, I replied. He looked up sharply. Why? Because revenge ends things, I said. Accountability changes them. Daniel swallowed. Lauren left. I said nothing. She said she didn't recognize the man I became when I thought no one was watching. I met his eyes. Now you know how I felt my entire life. A week later, our family sat together again. No celebration. No wine. Just truth. My father cleared his throat. We want to make this right. Not with money. With respect. I nodded slowly. That's the only currency I accept. At Silvertech, change followed. New leadership standards. Mandatory ethics reviews. And one final decision. Daniel kept his job. But not his title. He would rebuild. The hard way. That night, alone in my apartment, I looked out over the city I had conquered quietly. They no longer worshipped my brother. They no longer mocked my hobby. They finally understood the truth. Success doesn't make noise when it's real. It waits. And then it speaks. I thought healing would feel like peace. Instead, it felt like responsibility. 3 months passed. Silvertech had grown faster than ever. New markets. New partners. New rules. The industry was watching every move I made, not because I was underestimated anymore, but because I had become a standard. One afternoon, my assistant knocked softly. Ms. Morgan, there's someone here to see you. Who? I asked, without looking up. She hesitated. Daniel. I leaned back in my chair. Send him in. He walked into my office wearing a simple suit. No confidence. No entitlement. Just humility. I resigned, he said before I could speak. That surprised me. Why? He swallowed. Because for the first time, I want to earn something without hiding behind a name, yours or our family's. I studied him for a long moment. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, he said quickly. I just wanted you to know. You were right. Silence. Then I nodded. That's enough. That evening, I received an email. Subject: Speaking invitation, Women in Innovation Summit. They wanted my story. Not my brother's. Not my family's. Mine. On stage, under bright lights, I looked out at thousands of faces. I was once laughed at for a hobby I began. So I stopped explaining myself. Applause filled the hall. Success doesn't need permission, I continued. And it doesn't ask for validation from people who don't believe in you. Somewhere in the crowd, I saw my mother. Proud. Quiet. Listening. Later that night, alone, I opened an old notebook. My first ideas. My first failures. My first dreams. The hobby they laughed at had become the legacy they would remember. I closed the notebook and smiled. Not because I won, but because I was finally free.